Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
TikTok. It's a clock. It's a clock. Oh my God, it's a clock. Virus, you're a genius. You're a genius.
Hey everybody, welcome back to That's So Fringy podcast. I am Rick.
I'm Kristen.
And we are here to chat a little bit, just us two.
Ooh, you're stuck with just us.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to just be talking a little bit about what's been kind of rattling around in Rick's head. I'm going to be talking to Kristen about some of the stuff that's been going on, something that I've been thinking about lately. But first we wanted to just stop and say hello to all of you out there, all of our listeners. We're so thankful for you. And we appreciate each and every one of you listening because, you know, otherwise we're just talking to ourselves into microphones, which is a pretty weird life to live, if you ask me. So,
well, I mean, all the kids these days are walking around with their microphones. The ones that get me are the little ones, the little lapel ones that clip on that have like a loofah, you know, on the end of it.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, are you supposed
top.
to be? Yeah, are you supposed to be dusting the shelves, or is this a microphone?
Yeah. Well, that's supposed to be a wind blocker, but usually, you know, you don't see that because that's on the boom arm up above, you know, but now
we don't get followed around by boom mics.
So now you just want to smack it off of somebody's chest. Like, bro, there's like a giant bug on you.
Got a caterpillar. It's a caterpillar. The hungry caterpillar.
We digress.
We do. We usually do. So the other thing about this episode is Rick, this is all stuff that Rick has had in his mind. He's shared a little bit here and there with me, but for the most part, this is going to be all information that I haven't heard. So hopefully I can have some questions or some organic reactions, something that people might ask.
Yeah.
Because I'm very inquisitive and I tend to not believe things the first time I hear them.
Well, you guys are going to kind of get a glimpse into how things happen in our house when I present crazy ideas, you know, and how the real live reactions go. So
yeah, this is true.
All right.
So buckle up.
So here we go. So I'm going to be throwing up some pictures here and there just so that you can see them. I'm going to try to do my best to explain the pictures because I know a lot of people listen on their commutes and stuff like that, and they're not going to be able to see the pictures. But hopefully for those of you that have followed the flat earth for a while, because we're going to be talking a little bit about the flat earth tonight, if you can imagine that. Rick's been thinking about the flat earth.
Do we still call it flat earth or do we call it biblical cosmology?
Yeah, I think people prefer biblical cosmology.
I mean, it sounds more.
Well, anytime you have a, you know, a label that's put on something,
right,
people are very weary to go by.
That's true.
Something like I don't want to be called a flat earther because of the connotations that brings.
Oh, and you know something else that really chaps Rick is if you call him a QAnoner.
A QAnoner.
Do not call him a QAnoner.
It's true.
It's
I don't even know what a QAnoner is.
It's like the kill switch. He instantly goes to like,
yeah. I just want to talk. I just want to have a lot of conversation at a very short amount of time.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. Show me what you got.
Let's get into it. So what we're going to start with at the very beginning so that we understand the context of what we're talking about this time is, have you seen the moon map, what flat earthers or biblical cosmologists have understood or found to be known as the moon map. So what they did was...
So it's like an inverse of what's below, right?
Yeah, so they were looking at the moon and the image that's always on the moon, right? We always have these craters of the moon, and those craters are never changing. Nothing ever really changes. And they say in the official narrative that all came from asteroids hitting the surface of the moon, causing those issues. And so this very famous picture of the moon, most people know exactly what it looks like. But if you haven't seen it basically turned upside down, transposed, and overlaid with the flat Earth map, then you really haven't seen it in this way. And so I'll be putting up these pictures here. I'm showing Kristen now. So you've got the flat Earth, and then you've got all of this other land over here. So somebody, I don't know who the somebody is, somebody a lot smarter than me, somebody with a lot more time on their hands than I do. But they mapped out basically that all of the land that is on this, or I'm sorry, craters that are on this moon map would actually be land on a basically a flat Earth image, or an image of the Earth. So if you were to, and
we're not just talking like the known Earth, or are we talking the entire realm? Like if I'm looking at a map of Middle Earth, and we're in Hobbiton because I'm short, but is this the entire realm?
Yeah. So when you see the moon map, you realize that there's more land than, or if you're going to call these craters land, which a lot of people have seen videos online where they have lined all of this out, and there's a section of it that lines up perfectly with our known lands, the lands that we know. And as I said, these people have marked it all out. They've zoomed in and they've gone through all this. A lot of this work has been provided by other people. This is just me putting all of this stuff together.
Can you flash these pictures up for people?
Yeah, I tried to do that.
I know you're trying to screen share, but maybe in post production he can try to add them in.
Let me see,
so you can see a little bit of what we're seeing.
Let me see if I can do this really quick. Share this. No, it doesn't want to do it for some reason.
That's okay. You can put it in.
Yeah. So
we'll put a few blips here and there, but so essentially, when you look at the moon, the dark spots, the dark craters is what you're proposing. Those are land, and then what you see that is like the white gray color, which is what the majority that you see,
right?
That is all liquid,
that would
or
be
water.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's almost like you flashed a picture,
like a negative.
Let's back up for a second. You have to assume, and hopefully you've been listening to this podcast long enough to know that I don't believe that we landed on the moon. I don't believe anybody has ever landed on the moon, and I don't believe you can land on the moon. I think that the moon is plasma. And because of that, there has been an image flashed somehow. Nobody knows exactly how. Maybe when they were trying to nuke the firmament or something like that. But there was this flash of image that is constantly on the face of the moon. And that image is basically showing some of our known realm, but it's also showing other lands that are unaccounted for in our known system.
Okay. So if we go to the farthest point that we can go to on our realm, we hit what they call the ice wall, or whatever you want to call it. The ice shore. I think that's what Flat Earth Dave calls it. But so this is land that's basically beyond that ice wall.
Yeah.
Correct.
So understanding how this works is what I wanted to talk about tonight. Because as I said, I've been rattling this around in my head for a long time. I've seen this moon map for a long time. I've seen people do overlays like this, like you're seeing here on this picture. And so that's not new to me. None of that is new to me. What's new to me is what comes next. And this is something that a guy by the name of Phil Godleski did, a video that he did, like him, love him, hate him, whoever. If you know the guy personally, then you probably have an opinion. I don't know him personally. I did like this video that he did, and it summed up a lot of the things in my mind. So taking that, we go forward in our presentation here. Sorry, guys, trying to get this for her to see. So we have true north, right? And everybody knows that when you take out your compass, it's pointing at true north, which to all of us would be magnetic north. Okay. And that's, everything points to the middle on the flat earth map. Okay. So pointing to the center, as we had like with Theron and everything like that, everything pointed to the north. They're wanting to go to the north. Well, in that whole idea, this video came out, and I started to think about what Phil is saying in this video, which caught my attention, which is that the magnetic north is actually moving towards Siberia right now, which is that's actually a proven thing. Okay. So magnetic north moving,
I've heard that,
is very interesting. And the fact that it does move means that it makes one ask, or should, does it continually move? And if it continually moves forward, then at one point, if you round it backwards, if you back it off, then where would you be in time, if you will? Okay. And so then that starts getting you thinking about time and things working as a clock. As I've said before, the earth works like a clock. The flat earth works like a clock. Well, this stuff that Phil's doing is more of that. And so there's actually some stuff on these pictures that you'll see, like Lemuria and Atlantis, some things that we're probably going to talk more about later. But this is the main picture that I want everybody to focus on, and I'll have it up for you. So if you want to bring this up to a video and see this picture, it'll be really helpful. That's the unfortunate piece about this, is when you try to explain this to people, it's really hard to do without a visual, because it's something that you don't have a context for. We've talked about that before. If you don't have context for it, it's hard to make it up in your head. So hopefully these pictures will help you as it helped me. So if you look at that red circle, the big red circle. I
was going to say, there is a few. Okay.
Yeah. So this big red circle right here.
So the one right in the middle, kind of.
Yep. It's the big, dark, outlined, dotted one. And it has, in the middle of that, it has a red circle. And that red circle, you'll notice as we go on and show more pictures and we talk about this more, that part never moves. Okay. And so you've got this greater known land. This is our known land. So if you were to overlay this over that moon picture, this would be what we know, right? Okay. And
this matches up.
And so these arrows pointing into this area of the red, the big red line.
It looks like inside of a target, like you're looking through a scope, kind of.
Yeah. So basically, because you've got the Tropic of Capricorn, you've got the Tropic of Cancer, you've got the equator. The equator would be the equator would be this one that the arrows are drawn on. Okay. The arrows that are circling around, that would be the equator. And then,
well, that looks like that's the route that the sun is traveling.
Yes.
Most directly over.
Correct. So the sun and the moon, essentially, in this understanding of how the Earth realm works on the flat Earth map, everything goes around true north. Okay. So, or magnetic north, I should say. So as the sun and the moon are going around the magnetic point, that is a continuous thing. Now they do go up and down in a spiral, and they go out and in a spiral. And so that gives you the seasons and the times and all of that stuff. Right. We know all of that if people have been studying flat Earth for long enough.
Right, because it's the basic concept of the sun being closer to you, it's warmer. The sun being farther away, it's colder. So if it's doing, like, what do they call it, an ellipse? Yeah. Or like a figure eight kind of a deal, but it's also going up and down. It makes me think of the little race car tracks that we used to have, like when we were kids, and it would and it has like a track that it stays on, but it does this like kind of crazy circulate up and down type of thing.
Yeah, but when you got into the corners, they would like fly off into the wall.
Well, that's because you were probably always trying to go too fast.
Oh yeah, I had that thing cranked to 11 all the time.
I was like, zzz, 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 a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
This is how it happens when we're playing Mario Brothers too. Rick is.
Oh yeah, little Ricky's in the wall most of the time. Yeah.
Accurate. I'm like, bubble. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah. So as the sun and the moon are going around the magnetic north, we have then, if you think about that red spot in the very middle, now we have...
I'm going to call that the bingo spot. It looks like...
bullseye,
It looks like when you hit a bingo card with those little...
The bingo?
Sponge thing.
Oh yeah, the sponge thing.
We're
okay,
we'll call that
bingo.
Okay.
So when you go to the middle there and you hit bingo, you know that that's the center of that moon map, right?
Okay.
So the center of the moon map is not true north that we know it as, because we go to, I'm sorry, did you see that?
Whoa.
Magnetic
Did
north.
a bug fly in your throat?
Hopefully not, but maybe.
You're feeling full. Ate a June bug on the way over.
I don't need to have a protein shake later, I'll tell you that. So the magnetic north is what we know to be the center of our realm.
Okay.
But maybe that's not the center of our realm. Maybe that's the center of our known realm.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're calling the little color, blue and green area our known realm.
Yes.
Okay.
And for those of you that have seen the Prague clock, and
Right.
if you haven't seen that, I'll put a picture up. And if you're, later on, you could want to look it up, whatever. That's the idea of what we're talking about here. There's a smaller circle within a larger circle, and that smaller circle actually rotates around the outside edges of that bigger circle. That's exactly how the Prague clock works. And so this is the same concept. So as you look at this map, it's showing that true north or magnetic north is moving towards Siberia, which is exactly what they're saying. If it was moving in a clockwise fashion on this particular thing that we're looking at here, then it would move in that direction.
Okay.
And so think about a clock for those of you that are just listening online or on in the car or whatever. Think about how the clock moves around. You're going to be seeing our known realm about, what would you say that is, 4 or 5 o'clock?
5.
Yeah, 4:30.
I'm going to just go with
4:25.
4:40.
Yeah.
2.
And so that part of our known realm is where we are on the moon map at this time. Okay. And so
does that known realm area kind of like it just traverses around the outside, the perimeter, right? Or does it float freely?
What's that?
Then the known realm, does it just go around the outside?
So yeah, so what happens is as you have the moon and the sun attached to true, or I keep saying true north, magnetic north, right? As you have those connected, it is connected to that. If you think about a top spinning, that top is going to spin, and as long as those poles are straight up and down, it's going to be right there. It's going to make a perfect circle. And so that perfect circle that it makes actually happens to make the ice wall.
Okay.
Right? Because when the sun is going around in a circle like that, it's going to melt everything out to a certain point, and then it's going to traverse back in, and it's going to melt everything until a certain point, and it's going to traverse back out. And so why is it cold in the far north, and why is it cold in the far south, or out in every direction, right? That's because it's the sun that is making our known lands. But if the north moves, as it is, moving towards Siberia, as scientists will tell you now, then that means the sun and the moon are going to move, or are bound to it, will move with it.
Sure.
Right.
Because the sun and the moon always go around magnetic north.
Right. Correct. And so that would look like this eventually, where things would begin to thaw.
Okay.
And other things would begin to freeze. So as it continues to move, you have this continued thawing and freezing process as it goes around the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And some of you are already going bing, 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 bing. That makes so much sense to me. As it goes to people that have thought about the flat earth for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe other people aren't getting it as well. So let's explain it hopefully a little bit better here. So as we continue around, right, where we're losing certain pieces of land. As you look at this picture, you're going to see we're losing like South America, right? We're losing New Zealand, like these Australia, these lower areas, right? The places that are the closest to the ice wall. In that certain area, if we are moving clockwise, it would be those areas that would be freezing.
They fall out of the circle, basically.
Right. As you fall out of the circle, your area or your lands, as you know them, your home begins to freeze.
Mm-hmm. So then on the flip side, as it's moving around, one would assume it's thawing other areas, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And then you begin to think, well, maybe this is why they have certain areas of the ice wall that they have very heavily guarded by the military, right? Because there's certain pieces of land that are either uncovered and known right now and have thawed out, and they are searching them for materials and animals and land and, whatever. Antiquitech, things that they can either cover up or use for themselves nefariously, right? This is not it's
like a finders keepers game, and they don't want anybody else to be there because they want to always be the finder keeper.
Exactly. Whoever holds the power when these transitions, and we talk a lot about resets, and after the last reset, right, there had to be something that happened, right? We have the mud floods, we have all of these big things that happened throughout history, like Noah's flood and all of this stuff.
Well, and just about every culture / religion has a flood story, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, of different stories. Obviously we subscribe to the Noah version, but yeah, almost all these cultures, Old Norse mythology, they all have a flood story where there was a flood that destroyed everything, which would make sense if things are freezing over here but melting over here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this picture, it's very clear that as the sun moves, things begin to melt and things begin to, reveal themselves. And you have, if you think about South America and stuff like that, like there's going to have to be a mass exodus or a mass migration for a lot of South American
because those people have to go migrate somewhere.
They have to go somewhere.
Okay.
And so there's going to have to be, in a certain amount of time, whoever knows how long this takes. I know it does take some time to go, a full amount or a full cycle. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But, just the idea that it is moving, and as it moves, it reveals new things, and it hides, or there has to be this migration or exodus of man quite a bit. And I think a lot more than they've told us, right? And so if we continue this cycle, excuse me, if we continue this cycle, we see the more that this happens into the future, the more land is revealed and the more is gone. So now you look here, excuse me, the more you look at all of South America is gone. All of New Zealand is gone. All of that stuff is gone. And then but you have large amounts of land on the other end coming up. Lots more to explore, lots more to understand. And then as you continue this and click through these, you get the point, right? As you continue to click through these, you see the more is revealed. But eventually I mean, who knows how long this is going to take, but look at that. Eventually, we're not going to have any of our known lands available.
Accessible.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all going to be frozen. And so
these are the ice ages.
I mean, they
told us about ice ages, but they never, that I remember, like really explained what caused the ice to melt and thaw.
Right. There's always,
besides climate change, which is like, no.
Yeah, I mean,
don't get me started on
this is why they have the climate change narrative, right? Is because how do you explain what is happening, the shift of things? How do you explain that true north is moving, and as the sun and the moon move, things are thawing and things are freezing, and you're going to have probably lots of labor pains, if you will. There's going to be lots of things with the world that start to shift. You think about, on a flat earth or any other landmass for that matter, water is going to level out, right? That's one of the proofs for the flat earth is that water is self-leveling. And so if you think about that, the water on the earth, as it thaws in certain areas, it's going to begin to flood and rise. And you'll start to see a lot of flooding happening all over the world in certain areas. And so those are some things to look out for. Obviously, if you're going to try to prove whether this is right or wrong, you would see like a mass, South American migration happening. You would see something like floods and things happening in certain areas. As you can see, as you continue to move this clock, it changes everything, right? And so what I want to do is show everybody, or show you and everybody at the same time, what it would look like if we were to rewind instead of going forward to say what's coming up and what do we have to look forward to. What would it look like if we rewound the clock backwards? And so it would look a lot like this, what you're seeing right here. And so you can see this is America, South America right here. No, I'm sorry. This is South America. This is America right here. And so right where the red line is, for those that are listening, if you go back and look at it, it's right there is where America is. I know this is all inverted and upside down for the visual, but America is right on that line.
Okay.
And so as you're looking at this, you would see that there's a lot of ocean between the last known lands and the new known lands. So these are the known lands, and you've got this mass migration that would need to happen. Now, under this middle section right here, the bingo stamp that we talked about before, you'll notice there's actually, this is where they say Atlantis was, in here somewhere. Now, like I said, lots more about Atlantis and all of these other places later. I don't really care to talk about that right now. I'm just wanting to explain this. So you would see, you could have people from Atlantis area, or you could have people from here, and they would end up in a couple of places, either North America, South America, or England.
Okay.
Right. And so if you had people from, like, say, Atlantis or somewhere in that area jump over or sail over. Remember, they used to have a lot of ships, a lot more ships than we have now. They were all very well versed at sailing and all those things, and pirate ships and those type of things. It was kind of this brave new world, right? Everybody was
Viking longships.
Yes, everybody was sailing the water, trying to go from point A to point B and explore. Why were the Vikings exploring? Well, because they know that this happens, because it's been happening, and their ancestors talk about it, that this all rotates and everybody's got to eventually move. And it may be in your lifetime and it may not. It just depends on where the land is versus where the water is.
So would this be why they have found stuff like entire whale bones in like the Sahara Desert? Like, was that because that was underwater at some point?
Yeah, I would say that this accounts for a lot of sea life being found in desert areas. And I think it would also...
That happens a lot.
Well, I think it explains deserts, right? What is a desert? It's just like a giant ocean sea bottom without the ocean. It's like somebody forgot to put the ocean on the desert.
Well, because a desert, so sand is made up of rocks continually hitting each other and grinding themselves down into sand, right?
Yeah.
So what would cause that in a desert if there wasn't any water sloshing them back and forth together?
Yeah.
Like wind would blow it all in one direction. I don't think you would get sand.
Well, it would make dunes, but it wouldn't all be sand.
It wouldn't form the sand like we know sand.
It has to be sloshed around for that's why you have the sand at the beach looks like that.
Right. No, it's true. And actually when I was in high school, we went to Catalina Island, and on one side of the island, it's beautiful surfing, waves, like tropical paradise. And then you go to the other side and the beaches are all shells and rocks, and there's not really much in the way of waves. Yeah. Like you can't really... So you have a calm side of the island, and then you have a windier side of the island. And the direct correlation then is the windier side that has the waves, hitting the shore over and over again, is where you have the fine, beautiful sand. And on the other side, you have just rocks and shells. Like you couldn't even walk barefoot on it.
Yeah. And that's that's how you make that type of sand. And so to have that type of sand in the desert
for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah. It just makes sense that at one point it was probably just the ocean floor. Doesn't that make more sense? To me, it does, so you have to get this idea of we're living on a clock. And then I thought about that clip from, the Hunger Games. Do you remember when that one? I can't remember which one it is, but they're in the Hunger Games and they finally figure out that the whole thing is a clock. Spoiler alert for those of you that haven't seen it. But the whole thing is a clock, and certain really terrible things happen. So
you just have to stay in these certain zones.
Yeah, exactly. And so when they figure out that the whole thing's a clock, that kind of came to my mind a while ago. And just the idea of how this whole system continues to move, and the people that are in charge, or the people that know that this happens, if they decide to keep it away from other people, like the masses, then they would be the only ones that would know that this was happening. And they could put out long-term agendas like, I don't know, 2030, like Agenda 2030, where they got to get the population down to a certain amount, because by the time they get to a certain point, they don't want to have as many people, right? Because
they're harder to move, or they're harder to control? What's the purpose?
Both, I think. Because how do you control this mass population?
Right.
Especially when they start waking up and saying like, okay, wait a minute. What's going on here? Because as you see, if they were to just think about this for a second, if England, right, those with the crown, who owned like half the world not that long ago? It was the Queen, right? It was England. They owned everything, and it was weird. To me, it's always been weird that they owned so much. But if you think about it, if they were the ones that got here first, not necessarily the Queen, even though she was old, she's not that old. But what if those that understand that this happens, what if they made it over here and they found out about the new world, right? America. The new world, if you look at this picture that's right here, the new world would be a new land that and they would know unthawed.
if they always sailed east or west or whatever it would be, that eventually they would find new lands.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they always knew that they would eventually find them because this continually happens.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so once they found this new land, then what happens now? Well, who takes over? Well, that's exactly what happens. When you rewind time, you find that this is exactly what happened. Everybody started fighting for this new world.
Well, it's the same thing with children who are playing in the woods. Like, I built my fort over here, so now this is Kristen Town, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's what kids do. Like,
I plant my diaper flag right here.
This is my playhouse.
Yeah, so as you continue to think about this, it's like this is actually pretty compelling. And then it came to me to think, if this is happening once, could it be happening twice? Could there be two suns and two moons or two systems? Now, obviously, this is all conjecture, but I just want people to expand their mind and to think, could this same system that we live in, could it be happening on the other side? And some people have begun to see two suns in the sky.
Okay.
So what if we're getting closer to another one where these two suns are coming into the same sky area, and we're beginning to see, I've seen people on the internet filming a sun literally on one side of the sky, and then they go film a sun on the other side of the sky, and they're like, what is going on? Now, that could all be video trickery. I don't know. But
there used to be, I'm trying to remember where we read it, but do you remember there was a while ago we read something about there being two suns, and the plant life was bigger, humans were bigger because they were getting more nutrients from not just one sun, but two. So that would account for also finding giant bones, which we had a guest on at the beginning of our podcast who talked about them finding giant bones all over the place. So that would account for that is if you have an overlap in orbit of two suns, well, yeah, everything's going to be, because in my opinion, I'm just going to get on a soapbox for just a second.
Let's do it.
Just bear with me.
I'm going to drink some water.
The whole thing about the sun. Okay. So we know, and I've done a pretty deep dive into this. The incidence of skin cancer, you put that graph up along with the graph of when they started distributing sunscreen, and they are virtually identical. So the more people used sunscreen, the more people got skin cancer. Oh, yeah. So now don't be foolish and go out and get a sunburn. But if you know, like old farmers, back in the day, they didn't wear sunscreen. They wore a lightweight long sleeve shirt, and they wore a big sun hat so that they didn't burn their head and their ears, but they didn't wear sunscreen.
Yep.
And it's, I don't know. I feel like they are hiding a lot of what the sun actually does for us. And that even can get down the rabbit hole of like chemtrails and HARP, and they're manufacturing clouds so that we're not getting the benefits from the sun.
Right.
It's, I don't know. So what you're saying is, and here's another point that I would like to make. When you talk about the flat earth with people, with somebody who's relatively new to the idea, for whatever reason, I think people think of it as it all of a sudden takes their world and it shrinks it down and it makes it really small. Because now it's got a dome on it. So it's like, well, it just makes it seem like it's so much smaller. So this, when you're looking at this map, this is the firmament is huge.
Oh yeah,
like absolutely huge. So when I don't know, when you talk about putting a globe or a whatever orb over this stationary land, like why does that in your mind make that land seem instantly smaller? Is that weird, or is it just me?
Well, when you're talking about the cosmos, and it's ever
infinite,
expanding and infinite, it's like the numbers are so big, and so you can't even quantify them unless you've got a degree.
I mean, if you're talking just light years is a kind of a ridiculous concept.
It's a joke. And that's the thing, is it's never existed.
Right.
All of that stuff is all garbage to keep you from focusing on this stuff. Because once you figure this out, you begin to say, okay, well, if that's true, like I just walked everybody through, if that's true, then who's the enemy? Like, who's been lying to me this whole time?
Right. Like, who doesn't want me to know?
Who doesn't want me to know?
Right.
And it's actually pretty easy to start putting those pieces together when you start looking at who was the one that was the most vicious over time. Who were the ones that were the most vicious and the ones that were trying to take people over? You know, was it Europeans that were killing Indians, or was it Indians that were killing Europeans? You know, I think I think everybody knows the answer to that. And that, where did the Indians come from? You know, well, maybe they were already there, or maybe they were coming up from another area. Maybe they migrated from a different land.
They found it first. They found the New World first.
Maybe they found it first because maybe they got over here on boats and found it, or they came a different direction.
Right. Okay. Or they just got into the current, you know, like on what's that? Finding Nemo.
Yeah, they were just riding the current.
Into the right current.
Yeah, I mean, it's very plausible. I mean, who were these people? Who were the Indians? They were nomads, right? They didn't actually really live anywhere. Right. They lived everywhere. They were very in tune with the earth and the spirits and all of those different things. And they were very peaceful people, and they fought amongst each other, you know, tribally. But when I always say we, I wasn't there.
And you're not Indian.
When the Europeans came in.
English, bro.
I'm English. I guess it is.
So me. English.
I guess it was me. But the English came over and they just did what they wanted to do. And then you've got all of the Spanish, you know, going down and going and ripping all of the gold away from all of those people in South America, taking all of the artifacts from the Aztecs and the Mayans, and like just completely decimating these cultures. And then so that leads me to this. Let's get on to this, and then we'll come back to some of this stuff, because this stuff's cool too. So let's go forward a little bit and let's talk about the Book of Enoch, because the Book of Enoch, for those that haven't read it, has Enoch basically being shown how the world works, which is very interesting if you're a flat earther, because these are the things that you look at. You know, if you have a man being shown how Earth works, then it should kind of make sense with how you see the world work. Right. Well, here's one thing that he says in his book, the Book of Enoch. And the first quarter is called the East because it is the first. And so if you look at this picture that I'm putting up here, so basically what I've done is taken this portion from Phil's video and brought it over here so I could help explain. I don't want anybody to think I'm ripping things off. I'm just helping explain things. So, and the first quarter is called the East because it is the first. So if you look at this picture, you would have to think of, for those of you that aren't seeing it, you would have to think of the north being at the top. So take that flat earth picture, that moon map that we were looking at, and then have our known realm at the top at north, 12 o'clock on the clock. Okay. And then east would be obviously east of that. Okay. Is everybody following me here? Okay. So the first quarter is called the East because it is the first. So that would mean if this little map thing here is true that we're looking at, then everything happens in a cycle. And these circles would be about 2,000 year cycles, we'll say. Okay. 2,000 year cycles. So to get from east, which would be 3 o'clock, down to south, which would be 6 o'clock, it would take like, you know, however long, 2,000 years, 2,100, 500 years, whatever it is. We'll say 2,000 years.
And we've proven and documented that it only takes 2 generations for history to be completely rewritten. So this is happening slow enough that
it would be
they think we're not going to catch on to it, because they know. So they're like, we always want to be the first to the new land.
It would be very difficult to find out with the world being as big as it is.
Yeah.
And if you live on one end of the world and you don't have communication between people, I mean, who knows? Like you run into somebody that has, I always say, information is the most important currency that we have. It really is. Because if you know this information, then you can do with it what you will. and everything that you find, because if you know, then you're looking, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking for giant bones, or I'm sorry, you're looking and you find giant bones, and you're like, what the? Or you're looking and you find pyramids, and you're like, what the? And you have to now make up narratives, and you have to fix all of the history books to make sense. Okay, I digress. So from east to south would be 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Okay, so let's go to the next one here. It says the second, this is Enoch again, the south, because the Most High will descend there, which I thought was very interesting. Okay, and then you go to the next one, and that would be now the west, which would be 9 o'clock. Okay, so, and the west quarter is named the diminished. And if you see this picture, you would see that that portion of this
is the most bare
world map actually has the least amount of land on it.
Right.
So this was making me think of like Water World. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like where there wasn't a lot of land.
Yeah.
And people had to be more
weird. Okay.
They had to be more Water World type. They had to be more like, you know, it was more of a pirates, and, you know, you had to fight to survive because there's not a lot of land. It's very hard to be tribal with this much water.
Right. Because you're not fighting over land the way that we would.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fight over water.
Right.
Water land.
Yeah. So you have these people that are, you know, and this, again, a lot of speculation going on here, but these are all things to think about as you look at these pictures and think about. I want to hear everybody else's ideas that come to them too, because we're all working off the Holy Spirit here. So, and then the next one and the fourth quarter. Now this one's interesting because this is actually where we are right now on the map. So if the world started 6,000 years ago, then you would have east to south 2,000 years, and then you had south to west 2,000 years, and you have west to north 2,000 years. But the math might be off because we don't know for sure. Like nobody's actually telling us. We're just guessing based on the amount that it's moving. Okay, so the fourth quarter is named the north, is divided into 3 parts. The first of them is for the dwelling of men. Well, that's interesting. That sounds like Middle Earth. This is in the book of Enoch, by the way.
This is all the same passage, right?
All the same. This is Enoch 77, 1 through 4. Okay. And the first of them is the dwelling of men. The second contains seas of water. Yep, we got that. And the abysses, which is interesting, and forests and rivers and darkness and clouds. And the third part is the garden of righteousness, which I thought was interesting. So in the north is where the garden of righteousness is. And so have we not been able to find the Garden of Eden because we haven't come back around to it yet?
It's not accessible yet?
Yeah. Has it been frozen for a while? Or is it here in the bingo portion? So now this is where we have to back everything up and say, okay, we've got this rotation on the outside, but what's going on here in the center of all of the realm, right? The center of all of the realm would be where the Most High dwells, right? The Most High.
So that's the Atlantis area.
That would be this Atlantis area. There's also other lands there that we wouldn't know about because we've never learned about any of them. And so there is this weird, looks like chunk of land area that would be in the center of all of these 4 quarters, as Enoch calls them.
So if we're talking seasons, hot areas, cold areas, based on the rotation, what is the weather like in that bingo area? Is it like just perfect all the time? like
that would be hard to know because we've never been there. We don't know. That might be a place where light dwells just all by itself all the time. We don't know. We don't know. That could be where the tree of life is. That could be where the throne is. We don't know. But if you think about it, how would you navigate there? And Phil says this in his video, and I thought it was such a great point. Like, how do you navigate to there? Because if you pull out your compass, it's going to take you to magnetic north, which would lead you to the center of your known realm, but it wouldn't lead you to the center of the entire realm.
Okay.
So it would be very difficult to navigate here with our current GPS and way of navigating that we know how to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another interesting thought.
So do you think, this might be totally off topic, but
Yeah.
do you think that the pattern of stars and that kind of thing is more like would you have to follow the stars to get there?
I'm not sure. I hadn't thought that far. That's a very good thought.
Is there a story written in the stars we have to follow to find true north?
I think there's a lot written in the stars, and I think people have followed those stars for a really long time. And I think that, there's a lot to be said for how our entire realm works. Mm-hmm. When you take away all of the expanding universe and all of that nonsense, you can really focus on what you have right in front of you, which is your God-given gift, this earth, this realm that we live on, and we really forsake it, unfortunately, because all of our heads are in the sky trying to think about superheroes and, flying off into space and all of this different stuff. And a lot of people always ask me, like, okay, if you don't believe in the flat earth, and what about aliens? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, what if there are people coming from other lands? From other
migrating.
Like, what if there's another sun and another moon doing the same system, as I said before, on another portion, and say that whole society has stumbled upon us at one point, maybe in 1940 something, maybe in Nevada. Maybe they stumbled upon us in some way and they accidentally crash landed because of something that we did to their craft, trying to get it to come down. Because we want to capture one of these craft that are very elusive, because they are coming over here to try to figure out what's going on. But we are very militarily aggressive, because the people that live in this known lands are just that, very aggressive, and they have a very large control on power, and they don't want to lose that. And so if an entity was to come over here and to try to figure things out or try to teach us something, we would probably shoot it down.
Well, and I don't know at what time in history they started calling them aliens, but originally they were called extraterrestrials, which would be from extra terrain, which would be terrain outside of what we currently live in. So an extraterrestrial still fits, because they're not coming from outer space. They're coming from other lands, but they're still, regardless of where they come from, they're extraterrestrial.
Yeah, they could be coming from outer spaces. Outer spaces,
yeah.
That they know that certain people in the government may, or not even in the government, maybe in the deep state apparatus at its highest levels, maybe at the Majestic 12 level or something like that. They know about all of this. They know about these technologies. They know that there's other civilizations. They've been as down.
Well, and if you think about, if it's a 2000-ish year shift that we're talking about, you would have on one side people that were very advanced because they've been in this land working this, they know the ins and outs of this land. And then on the other side of that known realm, you have people who are just getting to this land who would be much more primitive.
Mm-hmm.
So that would explain, if there's technology out there that we haven't seen or we don't know about yet, maybe we're somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So you've still got people real primitive, and then you've got people real advanced.
Yeah, I think we've seen it all, right? The book of Ecclesiastes tells us that there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And it's very interesting the way that he puts that, right? Under the sun. He's not talking about out in space or anything like that. He doesn't, a lot of people would say he doesn't have any context for that, but the reality is there is nothing new under the sun. It just keeps doing what it's doing, and it continues to rotate. And what And the interesting thing, like I said, when we would come back to it, is going back to the beginning. Oh, I did want to show you this one too, but I'll put this one up. So this is a picture. I don't know where this picture came from. I found this one on the internet. I found this very interesting. It had Tierra Vista over here. Some of these names. I thought it was interesting. They had these little Nazi swastikas on here. Like,
that's weird.
Are there certain civilizations that use that symbol? Maybe, I don't know.
It's got to mean something to somebody.
It's got to mean something to somebody. But this would be the known lands here, and then these people actually have it like configured as an eyeball almost, which I thought was super weird. So that's just something for you guys to pause and look at if you want to. And then, here's the Prague clock. I did put it in here. So there's the Prague clock. And it is a circle within a circle. And you see at the bottom here, it has all of these circles as they go around, different animals and different things. I think they know a lot more.
Different ages, different.
Yeah, they definitely know a lot more. And everybody talks about the age of Aquarius, right? The age of Aquarius, when's that going to be? And it's supposed to be this time of peace and this time of all that stuff. But but what if it is an age that comes as the rotation of this continues to happen? So what if we are in a battle right now for the age of Aquarius, which would be, a time of all of us waking up and being nice to each other for a change, and actually liking each other, helping each other, growing our own food, going outside and grounding and getting in sunlight and connecting with this realm that God created, because he obviously created it for us to be here, right? He didn't want us to go out into the cosmos because he knows that they don't exist. He wants us to be here. And there's other things to interact with here. I wanted to go back and show you this. So as this rotation happens, check this out. What you would find so say there was something here a long time ago. So the last time that people were here on this land that we live in, America now, if you were to rotate it all the way backwards, what would you have before that? Like way back. And you rotate it all the way around to the last time civilizations lived here. And it was like a long time ago, right? Or it could have been, another circle or another area came around it. But this would account for finding of giant bones. It would account for finding of craft.
And that goes back to are you talking about the two realms and the two suns?
Yeah, or just one. If you think about it, if it is just one going around, eventually it would come back and find some wacky stuff, right? Something that didn't actually make sense. Because if this has happened, this revolution has happened once, who are we to say that it hasn't happened before that?
Right.
Who's to say how long this clock has been going? You know what I mean? We have no idea how long this clock has been going. We just know how long people have been writing things down.
That's true.
And so who knows what happened before that?
Not to mention during all of these wars over time, they burn museums and capitals and places where this stuff, the records could be kept.
Yeah. Every time.
And is that happenstance or is that intentional? I mean, I tend to think it's intentional, but
yeah. And as we find all these, like you look at the true north is going towards like Siberia area, right? And so what are we going to find as things begin to thaw in that Siberia area? Because Siberia has always been kind of non-inhabitable, but what if it thaws out one day and there's lots of resources that all of a sudden pop up, or lots of animals and species? That's another thing about UFOs and UAPs that we need to talk about, is a lot of them travel in the ocean.
Right.
And this is really coming back to the consciousness of people. A lot of people have written about this way back in the day, but there's a lot of people that are talking about it now and they're actually doing government research on this now. They're putting in actual research onto why are these anomalies happening in the water? How much of the ocean do we actually know about? And it's not much. I think the United States has mapped, the portion that it's in control of. They've mapped like 25% of it. You just have no idea. I think there's like 6 or 7 different Mariana type trenches.
Right.
Like you only hear about the one, but there's like 6 or 7 of them. Deep, dark places that people have never gone before. And there's just so much ocean. And then if you think about the ice, right? If you have the sun going around heating everything up, and the stuff that's not heated is just water under ice. Could you get under it?
So like an aquifer.
And go to other lands? Could you, I don't know, if you were like Ghislaine Maxwell or something like that, and you had your submarine license, could you go under the ice to other known or unknown secret lands?
I would think so.
I mean, I don't think so. But.
Well, okay, so then we go back to the missing 411, which we've talked about several times.
Right.
And when he overlaid that map of all these odd disappearances, and he overlaid it with the known aquifers underneath America, the disappearances were where there was the biggest areas of water under the earth.
Yeah.
Because we know there's aquifers. I mean, isn't that what's that geyser that squirts out every whatever? Old Faithful.
Old Faithful. Yeah, it's pretty faithful.
Is it like clockwork? Oh, see what I did there? Is it like Prague clockwork?
Yeah, so the understanding that the earth is a clock and it just keeps doing what it's doing is what I wanted to share with people, just because that's been rattling around in my head for a long time. I didn't have the visuals. I just didn't have the context to write it down or to draw it or whatever. But when I saw Phil's video, I was like, this is exactly what I've been thinking. And it would help me to articulate it better and to think about it better. So hopefully this helps people because, there's so much more to think about. Where did UFOs come from? They could come under the ice. They can come from the sky. What does Space Force do as an example? Could they be mapping other lands? Could they be flying out over these Arctic places and figuring out, do they have advanced technology? Yes. I think 90% of what we have as alien UFOs or UAPs, I think 90% of what you see in the air or what we have is ours, man-made. I think there are some that we have found over time as the clock shifts. We find them. We find the technology. We figure it out. We back engineer it. And then we try to test fly it. We try to drive it. We don't know what we're doing at first. And then we figure it out. And then we eventually develop something like Space Force where we can deal with where they know exactly how this realm works. They know how to manipulate the ether. They know that it works like a clock. They know that there's other species maybe that live in other areas and they can fly back and forth over there. They can communicate with them. They can trade resources.
Well, depending on the area that they live in, some of them could look very different than we do. So they could look alien-like. I mean, if you even think about in our known realm, the people with darker skin tended to originate down closer to the equator because their skin could handle that level of
over time
of sun. Right. And then now it's like you can live anywhere you want. But
well, if you think about this going on for a long period of time and the human migration that would happen over time, all of these different lands, you would have so many different mixed races, kind of like we do now, right? We would have so many different mixtures of people coming from all over the world, living in all different ways. You got people that live on the water so much easier than other people do. You got people that are adapted, like you said, to the sun. Other people that are white like us that are adapted to
the snow.
These lights. And glamping, those type of things. But there's something to be said for this system that we live in. And hopefully everybody got something out of that just to kind of get them mind flowing a little bit and realizing that there are other ways to look at this world that we live in and use your own observation to help you with that. What do you actually see? What are you actually experiencing? What makes more sense to the story, to the grand theme of the world and how it's tracked up until this point?
And for me, I feel like maybe I'm the only one, but I feel like knowing that this is all like clockwork, that this is all very, it actually makes a lot more sense to me. That makes me feel more, I don't know, secure or grounded or something than thinking of being on a spinning globe, hurtling through space. We're going to get hit by an asteroid, or, there's people can barely juggle 3 balls at one time. That's difficult to actually juggle that way.
Yeah.
And if we're floating through space, we're talking so many objects that you're trying to keep from hitting. And that's like, am I the only one? Okay. So back when we first had computers, do you remember the screensaver that was like, kind of like the Star Wars, like
space?
That always just freaked me out. Like I never liked looking at that screensaver.
Yeah.
Like it just, I don't know why it freaked me out, because I don't like the idea of, I like the idea of being stationary and having things that are, measurable, and things that are, what do they call it? You can replicate it.
Yeah.
Like those are very important. Observable. Yeah.
Right.
That kind of stuff. So being stationary and having this moving literally like a clock, you guys are just going to have to look at the graphic, actually makes me feel more stable.
Yeah.
If that's the word.
Well, it makes me feel more stable. I mean, when you think about like, who is God, and is he really in control of everything? And when you start to think about space and all of us flying all over, like he better have everything in control, because there's too much going on right now. Like what? But when you think like he created this whole terrarium, basically this habitat for us, and he wants us to not only live in it, but experience it, learn how to, work with it, not work against it, not because I think the earth is a very beautiful place that we could all be in harmony with, and learn how to be in harmony with each other, and learn how to be in harmony with this system. And I think we would all do well to master all of that. But now we have so much division and confusion, and all of that is manufactured. It's all manufactured. Yeah. And when you're trying to hide it because you want to own it.
Right.
You want to own it all.
It's like when you take your fort and you put like stuff around it so that it looks natural, so nobody will find out that actually if you just peel this back, it's a really cool fort in here.
Yeah.
I saw another thing. This is my final thought. It was, I think I might have sent it to you, and it was like a little meme that just said, because you call our realm or this area a terrarium, and it said, what if stars are just holes poked into the top of the container so we can breathe? And I thought that was really funny.
It's true.
What if?
Just what if? Yeah. And then you watch the Truman Show and you're like, okay, it was all a dream. All right, you guys. Well, we are just thankful that you listened to us ramble on. Hopefully you guys learned something from this. Hopefully it made sense.
I'm going to look at these pictures a few more times.
Yeah, don't hesitate to send us your questions or whatever you've got. You're just like, okay, you're out of your mind, or yes, this makes sense, or this made me think of this. We're down with all of that. So,
I think the biggest thing is we've talked a lot about the cognitive dissonance, but being able to at least entertain some of this stuff is going to open up a whole new world for you.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to entertain it. Just because I haven't seen the underbelly of society doesn't mean that I don't know that there's, murders and drug addicts and all kinds of terrible stuff happening. I don't have to have firsthand experience to know that those things are reality.
Right.
So I don't have to know for sure that the earth is flat, but if everything that I'm seeing is showing me that it's flat, that's probably you have to be able to entertain it. Otherwise you're going to just dismiss it. And
And it's really easy to dismiss, right? Because it takes
they've done
too
a good
much
job
work.
of making people seem crazy that think that the earth is flat.
I mean, if you think about the amount of work that it took to get me to the place that I am now to just explain the video that what I just explained, it took me a very long time to put all this together. So if you're just now hearing this and you're just like, this is wacky, it doesn't make any sense, or you need to rewatch it, just do that. Work it out in your mind. You have to work it out. You have to roll it over and over and over in your mind, and it'll eventually come to you, because that's the only way. If the way that things make sense is to have all of the information, right? If I can't make all these connections if I don't study history, if I don't know how the world turns and how the things have happened over time and how all of these pieces fit together. You have to read books, you have to watch movies, you have to do all that stuff, and eventually everything begins to come together, and you realize that we do live in a terrarium, and it's cool.
But we have holes poked in the top, guys.
Nothing wrong with that.
We gonna be fine.
It's not a bad thing. That means God has us right where he wants us to be.
Us around like on Horton Hears a Who. Yeah. He's carrying around this little flower that's got an entire civilization.
Yeah. Maybe we live on a ring on his finger.
Oh, that's kind of a precious thought.
Who knows? All right, you guys, with that, we're going to get out of here, but we love each and every one of you, and when we say that, we mean it.
We mean it. We love your support. Keep sending us messages, Instagram, our email, we have our website. Share this stuff. I know that it is wacky and people are going to look at you sideways at first, but
you got to do it.
Just be like, hey, these are my crazy friends, Rick and Kristen, and just listen to what they have to say. It's totally crazy.
They're the weirdest.
Because they might come back and be like, that actually makes a little bit of sense.
And now you have something to talk about at coffee. So there you go. You're welcome.
That's So Fringy Podcast, giving you all of the things to not talk about at the family dinner table.
That's right.
Or in our case, to talk about. That's all
I care to talk about.
We have a very fringy family. We're very blessed.
Yep. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to another Fringy episode. We're hoping you're having a good Fringy Sunday, Fringe Day. And we will see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, and chicken grease.